In Operation Desert Storm, fewer than 200 Americans died. In the streets of Los Angeles last year, 690 died in gangs.
Los Angeles may be their most familiar turf, but violent drug-peddling gangs are spreading out across the nation. As their numbers grow, police are cracking down. But the success of the fight against the gangs is being seriously questioned.
I take over another neighborhood by myself. I feel I'm the baddest one around.
Los Angeles can be a dark and dangerous place, with some of its citizens descending into madness. In the 1980s and 1990s, LA was a very different city, with high numbers of serial killers preying on its residents. However, as these killers have grown old and retired, they have now blended in with the rest of the community, appearing to be harmless neighbors. But the horrors they committed in the past continue to haunt the city and its residents. South Central Los Angeles was in chaos during this time, with the citizens in the underbelly of the city going missing or being found murdered. The extreme increase in crime kept the police force occupied, while gang violence and riots wreaked havoc on the streets.
These are all my brothers.
To do what the hell they want to do, which is kill and terrorize the streets. The ones that killed my son, I could rip their heart out, right?
His house was shot up in a battle between rival gangs. His wife and 3 children cowered.
Dozen dead every week. Neighborhood battles about drugs, turf, loyalty.
The drug pandemic also contributed to the suffering of the community. The Los Angeles Police Department was overwhelmed by a seemingly never-ending flow of madness, leaving the citizens of South Central feeling like the missing and murdered Black residents were not top priority. Many cases went cold and were soon forgotten. Funerals and vigils became routine, overwhelming feeling of dread. A community that only had each other soon realized they couldn't even trust those closest to them. The community developed its none of my business attitude, and they were hesitant to talk to the police. Understandably, given the reputation of the Los Angeles Police Department at the time, this attitude was justified.
Most insulting thing I have heard on this council floor in all the time I've been here. And I've been
However, this led to the downfall of many South Central citizens. Over a month after Andrea Triplett's body was discovered, on the morning of May 16, 1993, a resident of LA spotted something strange from her backyard. It was the body of 29-year-old Desiree Jones, also known as Tracy Williams. She was found on South Australia Avenue in a vacant home, wearing only a t-shirt. She had scratch marks on her neck and possible bite marks on her finger. She had been violently assaulted and strangled. The house she was found was frequented by transients, so DNA and footprints found at the scene were useless. The man responsible for her death, Chester Turner, was known to move frequently during the years he committed his brutal killings. He bounced between prisons, Skid Road, homeless shelters, girlfriends' apartments, and his mother and grandfather's house. He fathered 3 or more children during this time. In Chester's most prevalent neighborhood, he was most likely to be near a liquor store on 76 and Figueroa. He blended in seamlessly with his surroundings, a husky Black man with a goatee standing at a liquor store, invisible in South Central. The murders of a certain demographic slowed down after Chester met a new woman, Maria. Between 1993 and 1994, Chester, Maria, and Chester's mother moved to Salt Lake City, Utah. Chester found work at a fast food restaurant and security guard job, but that didn't last long. He met another woman named Ann Bell and returned to LA the following year. He moved to a place on West 85th Street where the next victim was found mere blocks away. On February 12, 1995 at 8:20 a.m., a friend of the victim discovered Natalie Price along a residence on West 80th Street. The house was known for drug activity, and Natalie's body had lacerations and bruises on her face. She has suffered blunt force trauma to her scalp, and her face has been pushed into the mud. She was also partially naked and strangled. Natalie left behind 3 children, and she was a loving mother and a fun aunt, but life has taken a toll on her. Unfortunately, 2 months later, on April 4th of 1995, David Allen Jones was sentenced to 35 years to life in prison for the murder and rape of Tammy Christmas, Mary Edwards, and Deborah Williams. Constant L. Rice, a civil rights attorney appointed by the Los Angeles Police Commission to evaluate the department's handling of the police corruption scandal, has stated that the transcripts of Jones' interrogation are troubling. She said, and I quote, "This is nothing more than the detectives fabricating a story in the mind of a retarded man." She added, "You could have convinced him that he was Spider-Man for the afternoon." Meanwhile, Chester Turner was alive and well on the streets. His action seems to have been delayed until Jones has been convicted and the media quiet down. He was likely planning his next move. On November 6, 1996, the body of Mildred Beasley, 45 years old, was discovered on an embankment next to the 110 freeway, South Broadway, near the Harbor Freeway. She was partially naked and has been found through a hole in the fence. She was last seen get on the bus going to her sister's house, but she never returned. Mildred was a married woman with a teenage son and had only been in Los Angeles for 8 weeks, having been relocated from Texas. Despite his murderous crimes, Chester remained undetected for a long time. He was eventually caught for other offenses, but his killing spree continued for years. In March of 1997, Chester was staying in a hotel on Broadway, 88th Place. After getting into an argument with a girlfriend, she flagged down the police who came to his motel room. Chester answered the door, but refused to put his hands behind his head for a weapons check. The officers attempted to handcuff him, but he escaped, dragging them down a hallway and into a parking lot. He kicked one of the officers several times in the chest and leg before attempting to grab the officer's gun. He broke free and fled. A search dog alerted the officer that Chester was near an abandoned building hiding in a wood pile. They ordered him to come out, but he emerged and attacked the canine with a nearby fiberglass sink. The dog bit him, and Chester charged at the officer despite being hit with 6 rounds from a beanbag shotgun. He was finally apprehended after another violent struggle. He was charged, but not for murder. If the officers had known at the time that they were dealing with a serial killer, they could have saved many lives. After his arrest and release, Turner was reported living at the Regal Hotel on 6th Street in 1998. This was blocks away from his most recent victim, who was fortunately found, and her murder was recorded. On February 3rd, 1998, at 7 a.m., a security guard discovered the semi-naked body of 41-year-old Paula Vance at the back of a vacant business on West 6th and Hope Street. When paramedics arrived, they assumed she had died of natural causes, but detectives who arrived later decided to investigate the security camera. The security camera at the scene captured Paula and Chester Turner walking down a hallway together, where he then attacked her. He violently assaulted her, breaking her neck due to the strangulation. When the detectives first looked at the tape, it was such poor quality they could only make out a husky black male suspect. DNA was recovered from Paula, but it went nowhere, and her case quickly became cold. Despite the detectives' efforts, the victims continued to multiply in Los Angeles. The drugs and the gangs ravaged the streets. The residents of the city felt as if hell was really at their front door. On a cold night, April 1998, Central Patrol officers were flagged down at 2 a.m. and told that a possible dead body has been discovered in a portable outhouse on Gladys Avenue. It was 37-year-old Brenda Breeze, who was found dead in a portable toilet. She was slumped over, her head on the seat, her pants around her knees, her shirt pulled up around her neck, her hoodie fabric cord was entwined with her bra, which was wrapped around her neck so tightly that it cut through her skin. Strangulation was the cause of her death. Detective Cliff Shepard of the Los Angeles Police Department was chosen to join a special unit formed in the late 2001 to investigate the city's unsolved killings. He saw it as a chance to re-examine a murder that had been bothering him for over 3 years, and that was Paula Vance's rape and strangulation in February of 1998 in downtown Los Angeles. Her murder had been videotaped. Shepard and Ramirez spent hours studying the footage, even getting help from a Paramount Studios to decipher the image, but it proved to be unsuccessful. The 7-member cold case unit was in charge of reviewing a huge backlog of unsolved killings, with emphasis on sexual motivated murders. Paula Vance's murder fit the unit's mandate, so Shepard decided to send off semen recovered from the victim to the Los Angeles Police Department crime lab to see if DNA evidence suggested a link with any known criminals. As the years went by, Chester grew more vile and angry. His ego got the best of him, and it would eventually lead to his permanent capture. In 2002, he was required by law to register as a sex offender. The shelter called Midnight Mission still allowed him to gain employment as a security guard as a part of a drug rehabilitation program, which put him in the path of his next victim. On March 17, 2002, Maria Martinez, a 47-year-old homeless woman, was walking alone by a hamburger joint on Los Angeles Street when Turner called her over for a light. Seeing Chester was a familiar sight at the Midnight Mission shelter, which they both frequented. She was also known as the Cigarette Lady, as Chester used to buy cigarettes from her on a regular basis. As a result, Maria approached Chester with a sense of comfort, but she was mistaken. When she handed him a lighter and watched him light his crack pipe, instead of returning the lighter to her, Chester grabbed her in a chokehold and dragged her behind some dumpsters. He told her to strip naked and sexually assaulted her for 2 hours, pushing her face against a wall and restraining her by the throat. When he was finished, he threatened to kill her if she went to the police. Despite her injuries, Maria walked straight to the Los Angeles Central Division and reported the assault, even after being turned away. She pushed through, and despite not being taken seriously at first, her determination was finally heard and a rape kit was done. To this day, detectives don't understand why Chester let Maria live, but this was the beginning of his road to capture. Describing the perpetrator, she accurately described Chester, including his distinctive scar on his face. Chester was soon arrested and was forced to submit a DNA test. On September 8, 2003, Detective Shepard and his partner, Detective Ramirez, received a call they'd been waiting for. DNA test came back as a match for Chester Dewayne Turner. After learning this information 11 years later, in March 2004, Jones was released from prison and, with the help of a civil rights attorney, filed a lawsuit against the city of Los Angeles. David Allen Jones was awarded $700,000 in compensation. To defend the detective's actions in this case, Jeffrey C. English, a former federal prosecutor and former inspector general for the Los Angeles Police Commission, agreed that the detectives were putting words in his mouth, but he said that those are accepted police tactics. Police are allowed to lie and trick suspects into telling the truth, he said. But Deputy District Attorney Lisa Kahn, who secured Jones' release from prison based on DNA evidence, said the case against him at trial was strong. If the Jones case came to the door for me today to file and prosecute, she said, it would have been an easy call. It's clear what initially attracted Detective Jones to the then 33 as possible suspect. Ongoing, after getting a ping on their murderer, Detective Shepard began building a case, and the good news for him was that dear old Chester was already in prison because of the rape of Maria. Since Chester DNA was now in CODIS, His dirty deeds lit up like a firework, and not only was his DNA linked to Paula's, but 10 other women as well. But the audacity of this man, he pleaded not guilty to all charges. As the years went by, Chester Turner's chilling presence loomed over the streets of Los Angeles. He lived a life of crime with a long rap sheet that included arrests for burglary, drug possession, sexual assault. Despite this, he managed to elude authorities for years, committing a string of brutal murders and sexual assaults in South Central area, living mere blocks away from each of his crimes. He blended in with the neighborhood, evading detection as he hunts his victims. But even as he moved from place to place, one thing remained consistent: his proximity to the scenes of the brutal attacks. Working at a local Domino's, Chester had access to bustling streets of the city. And during the years of 1993 and 1994, when his activities in LA seemed to have ceased, he was conveniently out of town in Utah with his girlfriend and mother. But when he returned, it wasn't long before the bodies began to pile up again. By 1995, Chester had moved to the west of 85th Street, and by 1996, he was living just west of the 110 freeway on 103rd. But it was around 1998 when he took up residence at a downtown homeless shelter that he would finally cross paths with the one person who could bring him down, and that was Maria Martinez. As Chester's web of lies and deceit began to unravel, the true horror of his crimes was revealed. With no remorse and chilling predictions of his eventual return, he was finally brought to justice, but not before leaving a trail of terror in his wake. The chilling realization that a serial killer had been living amongst them for years, undetected, sent shivers down the spines of the residents of South Los Angeles. Chester Turner, a large, imposing figure with a distinctive scar on his face, had preyed upon the most vulnerable members of the community. Homeless women, sex workers, committing unspeakable acts of violence and leaving a trail of bodies. Despite the obvious red flags, Turner managed to evade justice for years, blending seamlessly into his surroundings, evading detection. It was only when a dedicated team of detectives began going through old cases and linking them through DNA evidence that the true extent of Turner's depravity came to light. As the detectives pieced together the puzzle of Turner's reign of terror, they were shocked to discover that he killed at least 15 women, and possibly more over the course of a decade. His brutal killings have left a trail of destruction and heartache in their wake, leaving families and loved ones searching for answers. In the end, Turner was convicted and sentenced to death for his crimes in 2007, but the scars of his brutal killings will never fully heal for those who have survived, for the families of his victims. The case serves as a reminder of that evil can lurk in even the most unsuspecting places, and the importance of staying vigilant.
I'd have been painted to be this way out, this person that you can't trust, you can't be around, or he gonna do something to you. I'm like, please, come on now. I'm just like any average other person you have a conversation with.
As a woman said in an interview, Turner blended in with his surroundings and did not appear suspicious. She said, he knew his entire neighborhood. He knew that area. He knew the cold, hard truth that no one would notice his killings. Chester played the system for his lack of concern for his poor communities. The fact that Chester Turner was able to commit such heinous crimes without detection for so long is a chilling reminder of how easily a predator can blend in with their surroundings. He knew the streets of Los Angeles like the back of his hand and used that knowledge to his advantage, preying on vulnerable women without the fear of being caught. Even when he was finally arrested and charged, he showed no remorse for his actions and continued to threaten and intimidate from behind bars. And that, my friends, is truly terrifying.